Well, thank you very much for coming. After 3 years in Spain working remotely I had goosebumps when I first saw the building again. It's been really nice. It's been super intense week since I came. I'm just gonna put you some images so you can get a bit in context. I think we have sound now coming from both places, so it has a bit of delay. Maybe we should turn off the big one. Also, I think, well, maybe I should have done the Zoom from my computer as a host, because I think it's gonna be a bit of delay with the image as well. Okay, there's a bit of delay with the images. Well, this is a little collage of the beginnings of my research back in 2019, December 2019, January 2020, and then the whole thing kind of was put on hold until this week when I'm resuming activities. I'm going to present a mapping of Hong Kong's hidden music scenes. It's a whole research, not very conventional in a way. My PhD here in Hong Kong U was, I focused on Arturo Soria's Ciudad Lineal, linear planning, capitalism, economy. But in parallel to that, also as a way to survive, to go through the PhD and life in Hong Kong, that sometimes is a bit stressful, and so as a way to kind of express myself, I started playing music in different bands in Hong Kong. This is one of the songs I composed for one of the last bands. And already from all these videos I was doing for the band and the lyrics and everything, I can clearly see how the whole Hong Kong experience was conditioning everything I was doing. From images to sound to lyrics especially. And little by little I start thinking like, well, I'm wandering around the city carrying all my scenes in super packed MTRs. I'm playing in these awesome, very unique spaces. Why don't I just start documenting all this? I didn't have a very specific plan, but I was like, okay, I'm gonna go anyway to all these places. I'm gonna just start writing what I see. I'm gonna start talking to people. Back then I didn't make enough audiovisual material, which I really regret. And now I'm basically recording everything I do, even with the microphone, because sometimes magic happens and you cannot take it back. No? This is another video we did to promote an album that was called The Intimacy of Strangers. things are kind of all work together. I did an article called The Intimacy of Strangers, talking about the density of main food compounds, and also as part of a design trust workshop, writing workshop that was super interesting with Mimi Tiger. Talking about this whole idea of the intimacy of strangers in the city when we are so close and so far from each other. The whole idea of this album came from that, and it's super heterogeneous. And this is the cover we created, where we see a lot of the elements of the city that were really influencing us back then. But I also saw there were some sort of contradictions. This is an event we played in HKU Place, like a pretty fancy high-rise building, very corporate. But the whole event was called Basking Experience. So it's a whole oxymoron, it's a whole contradiction in itself, right? Basking Experience is all about playing in the streets, just trying to make some money and sharing with everyone. And this was really like elite type of building. So I also thought of giving it a more rigorous and a more serious touch, and start looking at numbers and what's happening with the art industry, all these emergent subcultures, especially in the field of music, but everywhere. And I started to say that also into an academic paper. Also, like these commercial buildings, mixed-use buildings in Mongkok area where we used to rehearse. I started looking at the plans of these buildings, how they've been, in their interiors, there's been a lot of changes, renovations, expanding of rooms to survive, right? In this like super expensive metropolis. And these are some of the very unique spaces. Like this really remind me of movies, right? So Kowloon Walled City, this kind of atmosphere. So there was a chance I start like knowing a bit more about design trust, and then I applied for a seed grant to kind of start conducting this research. I had to apply twice. Like first time I didn't get it, but then after talking with them, seeing what I could improve, I presented this project. This is basically in their website, like a short explanation of what it's about. This project is a map of the musical peripheries of Hong Kong from within, visiting, studying, drawing, and photographing the often ephemeral music venues, and then analyzing them in reference to the city's real estate dynamics and socio-political context, interviewing the main stakeholders, and reading the stories behind the music with the goal of deciphering the role of creative production in the current context of Hong Kong. Through this, I start kind of mapping, I start interviewing people, I start looking at lyrics, analyzing them, drawing buildings. And one of the results is a website I have started. Let me put it. So I just started collecting in this website a series of videos, a map where I'm starting to put venues that I visited. I interview the stakeholders. I draw some of them, like This Town Needs, like the fourth version of Hidden Agenda. All these red dots are places that have closed recently. Actually, most of the case studies I had during this research in 2019 have closed, which I think really emphasize the need to document them and to keep them alive in a way. I started doing a series of drawings that I will show you later in the presentation more in depth. But well, these are some of the spaces. And so basically I will go there, photograph them if possible. I will go through Google Earth, pictures of people, videos, you know, like the fire escape routes of buildings. I will take pictures of that, and then I will print it, and I will take notes on site. And the most fascinating part is been, especially I started like this week, I've been interviewing people of the music scene, all sorts of people, musicians, owners of venues. And it's been, first of all, fascinating how people are, without knowing me, I was writing to them from Spain, and they all been super supportive. Like last Monday, I was with Tofu Kingdom. Is a band from Hong Kong. Like one of the members studies here. So I started creating these interviews where I will go to the place where they normally rehearse or play, and get a bit the atmosphere of the band, of the space. So the interview is also combined with some shots of these spaces. They play at Clockenflap tomorrow. It's really cool because they just started playing. They're pretty young, and after just a few months playing live, they're gonna be at Clockenflap. They were like super excited, and they have a very, very nice sound. Well, there's a little bit of delay with the images, but you can have a look at all these interviews. I've been uploading them little by little. Yesterday I had a very interesting talk with Steve from Hidden Agenda. I don't know if you know about this space organization. Started creating concerts in warehouses. They had to move 1, 2, 3, 4 times. He explained me how he was taken by the police in one of the concerts, how the band that came from UK called This Town Needs Guns, how the police took all of them.
Even you tell me I need to get a working visa, the most thing is pay money, right? Why just do this like that? Because I just love music and we do music, so that they don't care. Because illegal is illegal. So after on the show day, after the show, have 2 spies, just like have one couple, the hand like.
And I will just show you a little bit of this one because it's interesting. I recorded this interview on Saturday night. Chris B she's been around the music scene of Hong Kong forever. She's half British, half Hong Kongese, and she promoted the Underground Hong Kong. It's a website, it's a whole organization to promote underground music. And we were talking in Rula Bula Live that perhaps is not the most paradigmatic place for underground music scene, but we record the interview, we record some of the concerts, and yesterday they announced they closed the venue, right, this week. She wrote to me, it's like, really good that you actually documented this very last night because they are closing right now. So, well, this is more or less what I've been doing all these days. I had to pack what I was planned to be done in 6, 7 months, 12 months. I had to do it in like 12 days. But I really think I have to come back again and continue this because this whole map of music experiences is very rich, and I need to continue talking with people. Tomorrow I have 2 more interviews. I'm gonna keep on doing them until the very last minute when I leave on Sunday. In parallel to this, there was a call for papers for a book organized by Berkeley University that was called Embodying Peripheries. Embodying Peripheries called for innovative and provoking contributions across geographies and historical timeframes that look at the formation of embodied practices and subjectivities in the periphery that inform the commuting, laboring, occupying, squatting, body resistance to form of oppression, discrimination, corporate, blah, 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 performative experience, music, dance. I saw this and I sent an abstract that I remember sending it like at, I don't know, it was 7 a.m. here, it was like last minute before like California time, but but I'm gonna try. And they accepted the paper, and this is the cover of the book by Firenze University Press. So now I'm gonna go a bit more serious. I'm gonna present a bit of that chapter that I wrote. I'm gonna summarize some of the key things. This was the title: Hidden Music Scene, Governmentality and Contestation in Post-Colonial Hong Kong. Floor 26 of Hawking Commercial Center. The elevator stops. At the end of the corridor, the sounds of a heavy metal band, the tune screams buffered by the cracked plywood door of a tiny music studio. When the door opens, a loud guitar riff makes the wall tremble with a young shopkeeper smokes indifferently in the fire staircase. Built in 1980s, this building, located in Yau Ma Tei area, was known for its origins of being the site of illegal sale of pornographic videos by Hong Kong triads. Currently, it hosts an accidental blend of commercial and leisure premises, cheap hostel and apartments. Outdated factory buildings in Kwun Tong, Sa Po Kong, Kwai Hing, industrial architecture gradually surrounded by newly built commercial and residential complexes, condemned to a postponed demolition by land speculation. Its precarious wait for urban renewal has offered an opportunity for young musicians to establish music studios, classrooms, or improvised bedrooms where music and teenage discoveries mingles with the noise of hoists and repetitive machinery. This is kind of the maps I will take pictures at to later draw all this. In Kwun Tong, Hidden Agenda, what will become the most well-known independent live music venue in Hong Kong, emerged in 2009 as an underground music venue providing space for an alternative to cantopop mainstream. Chased by government officials from venue to venue, this organization has become a symbol of the resistance of independent music culture against governmentality over that expression. In January 2018, it reopened its fifth location under the name This Town Needs, this time in Yau Tong area. They closed in February 2020. The name This Town Needs comes from that night he was talking about when the police came. They took the band. The band that was playing was called This Town Needs Guns, and that's how they took the name from there. He told me like he likes this band so much, but he feels so bad about what happened, right? That he doesn't dare to ask them to come to Hong Kong to play anymore. Such hidden networks formed by musicians and scattered in unexpected venues around Hong Kong provide a sonic collage that reformulates some of the city's peripheries from within. These networks or scenes are not limited to their spatial aspects within Hong Kong's geography, but involve a whole array of alternative activities, social connections, and artistic initiatives. Through emergent subcultures, young artists deployed a wide range of tactics to counter the commodification and politicization of creativity, as well as the speculation over space, in order to achieve new opportunities in a, I quote Lefebvre here, bureaucratic society of controlled consumption. In his work on everyday life, which focuses on the resistance of extraordinary people to consumption, to structures of power, Michel Desserteaux makes reference to the idea of, quote, silent discoverers of their own paths in the jungle of the functionist rationality, end quote. The main actors of this work, despite feeding on and actively participating in Hong Kong's consumerism dynamics by taking reference from social media, e-commerce, or shopping malls, they produce their wandering lines or wandering sounds with their own scene tactics through their artistic practices. Notably in Hong Kong's reductionist bureaucratic system, with a strong predominance of statistics and evaluation, focused on classifying, calculating, and putting into tables, these artistic rituals and reinterpretations of the city's culture often remain overlooked or hidden to the system. This band is called David Boring. They play at Clock and Flap as well. And this is also the last concert in a place called Saichun in Kwai Hin area. I was lucky to be there for the last concert before they closed. Then they did some kind of live performances during kind of COVID lockdown, but this is the last official concert. Well, I wouldn't call them official, but the last live concert that they hosted. The present analysis of these non-mainstream musical interventions in space, focusing on Hong Kong's alternative indie rock music scene, unveils deeply rooted issues in the city in the following order: past and present debates on culture and art in Hong Kong as a global financial hub, the post-1980 generation's means of expressing its latent discontent in a special administrative region with an uncertain future, and the continuities and discontinuities of Hong Kong's colonial past via governmentality and its contestation. The paper ends with a glimpse of the embodiment of Hong Kong's periphery through lights and sounds and a brief conclusion. Market dynamics in Hong Kong in the past 4 decades have given way to spatial paradoxes, where what might appear as opposite realms, like those of indie rock music and banking, are tightly interconnected. This is Jardine House, and this was another place that closed called Grappa's Cellar, with an intervention of a performance of a band called Dr. X. That they had really cool performances, very intense. So they were performing in this building, right, which is kind of 2 different worlds put together there. The relocation of Hong Kong's manufacturing enterprises to mainland China in the 80s provoked the abandonment of many industrial buildings. The metropolis shifted from being a manufacturing hub in the post-World War II period to a financial center, giving way to new scales and modes of consumption. High-rise towers owned by big corporations loomed along the central harbour front in the north of Hong Kong Island. Hong Kong was presented as the Asian city of the future, a new economy with a new look, new markets and trends that shaped one of the most prominent real estate markets in the world. Being part of a keynote of international networks where global creative markets are a priority asset, what are the means through which Hong Kong's underground culture can flourish, challenging the marriage of convenience between art and finance? Starting mainly in the 1990s, the increase of empty industrial buildings gave way to reclamation of some of these spaces by different art groups. The resulting dynamics led to the establishment of some sort of peripheral clusters in the city of artists in areas like Taiwan, with spaces like Asia One Tower, headquarters of Asia One Publishing Company and Art Exhibition Space, and other galleries and studios. Fotan, mainly focused on visual arts and site of the Open Studio Festival Fotanian. Wong Chuk Hang, with art galleries and organizations such as Hong Kong Free Press, that they host some events there and concerts, and whose value has increased noticeably since the completion of the South Island MTR in 2016, that connects the area with Admiralty. And Kwun Tong position itself as the main hub for musicians. And recent field work I've been doing, as the videos I saw you of Tofu Kingdom, shows the emergence of another cluster of musicians in Kwai Hin. These artistic spaces, without the special restrictions and regulations of areas like Hong Kong's Soho, are versatile and adaptable, often generating opportunities for multidisciplinary collaborations. The buildings in which these networks thrive, however, live in a precarious state of latency. They are ambiguously regulated by the government, and they are waiting for basically property developers to target them, either for renovation or for demolition. In recent years, industrial buildings like this have become the main asset for real estate investment, backed by the Revitalization Industrial Building Scheme 2009-2010, presented by the Hong Kong's government. The consequences of this project have manifested in a great increase of rental prices for these spaces, between 200 to 300, and artists cannot afford it. Actually, around more than 80% of these spaces are office space. A central theme in this cultural crossroad is the unbalanced battle over space in the city. A great percentage of the struggles of Hong Kongese people are deeply rooted in spatial inequality and inaccessibility, be it in form of housing, public space, or cultural venues. The Hong Kong government is both the landowner and lawmaker in a way, so over the territory with a complex geography. which often leads to controversial relationships between the administration and large state corporations. These dynamics, in a way inherited from the colonial era, have continued and intensified in recent years, partly fueled by the influx of foreign mainland Chinese capital in real estate, mostly the privatization of public spaces, and the promotion of mega projects such as the West Kowloon Cultural District that is, it's happening after like 13 years when we had this very first renders. Diverse protests during the past 2 decades have been triggered by new urban developments like the Guangzhou-Shenzhen-Hong Kong Express Railway Link in 2009 and 10, or in defense of urban heritage, such as the Star Ferry Pier in Edinburgh's Place or Queen's Pier in 2006 and 2007, respectively. The unprecedented demonstrations that took place in Hong Kong during 2019, and perhaps more visibly the Occupy Central in 2014, can be seen as blunt illustrations of the ongoing battles over public space in Hong Kong, Main Street, institutional buildings, and university complex. Also, it's very symbolic, right, of taking back public space. Occupy Central happened in Hong Kong, but was part of a much larger phenomena that in Spain as well there was Occupy the Puerta del Sol, that was also the most symbolic square of Spain, Occupy Wall Street. So it's not an exclusive phenomenon of Hong Kong, especially in the beginning of the 2010s. Hidden music generation. School uniforms are black worn-out T-shirts. Can I have some water? Do you know this band? It's Hong Kongese band as well. No? Young local musicians in dark clothes, highly trained from a very early age under the competitive pressures of Hong Kong's education system. They are virtuosos, these guys. I've seen them live. We even compete with them in a battle of the bands, and I felt like I cannot compete with them because they are really good. A sort of silent punk culture. They represent a mix of discipline, laconic virtuosity, and repressed discontent. The difficulties suffered by the art fields in Hong Kong can be explained to some degree as a result of the education system's prioritization of market-oriented practical careers to the detriment of art and humanities. This trend, initiated during the British occupation, has continued after Hong Kong's hangover. The until recently hidden talents, those that have learned and practiced music in scattered peripheries surrounded by the rhythm of the metropolis, are representative of the dissatisfaction of the post-1980s generation. Children of a sinking middle class, rooted in Hong Kong, they have emerged as a political force, becoming visible and expressing their frustration in diverse forms. Most of these young musicians, despite forming a heterogeneous group, share some similar characteristics. I conducted many interviews, as many as possible. Around formal interviews will be like with 8 or 10 professional musicians or musicians that really. But then I have been talking with many more in informal settings. They live with their parents in most of the cases or in small shared apartments. One of their main concerns is that they do not see any possibility of accessing Hong Kong's property market. They feel like there is no future for them in a city with an expiration date. And social media is their common mean of interaction. They are mostly students, boys and girls working flexible hours. They work in music shops. They teach music. They perform, but they don't. Their main income doesn't come from performing. Some of them become being waiters, waitresses, shopkeepers. Or alternatively, there are new professionals with university degrees working long hours, but whose salaries hardly cover their rent. These young people played an important role on the front lines of the protest back then, and have formed a dynamic network of artists gestated in the spaces made possible by these industrial buildings. For many of these youngsters, sharing a cheap rehearsal room with their bandmates in an industrial or commercial building is the only way to have their own space outside their parents' home or school. It is not unusual that those who rent these places occasionally stay overnight and sometimes even live there, even though it's considered illegal and in some cases even dangerous given the poor conditions of the premises. Some of those whom I interview affirm that they rented their first band room at a very young age, starting from 16 years old. Such is the case of Kay Clark. He was the drummer of my band at the very end. He joined us. Clark is a 38-year-old percussion teacher and session drummer in jazz clubs of Hong Kong's Central Business District. He currently shares a 630 square foot studio space with 2 other local musicians for a total rent fee of $1,150 approximately per month in an industrial building of Sa Po Kong area in New Kowloon. This is the building where he is located. The building is accessed through a cul-de-sac street that at the time of the interview is completely blocked by different cars and trucks loading and unloading goods. The concierge observes us with curiosity while I take some pictures of the shabby mailboxes of the building lobby. A freight elevator brings us to the long corridor of damaged walls and ceilings guarded by CCTV cameras. In some parts of the ceiling, the steel reinforcement of the concrete beams has been exposed. According to Kai, there are 2 more music studios in the building, as well as a photography and big drama studio, and a Muay Thai gym. But once we enter the studio, a feeling of coziness contrasts with the industrial character of the building. He points out the importance of having a room outside his parents' home, where he can chill out, watch TV, work on his computer, and very importantly, store countless of instruments and collectible toys. The first reason for him to choose this building was the price and the kind of freedom he has when it comes to noisy activities, especially for a drummer. That's a huge concern. He had his first studio at the age of 16 with a group of 9 friends that played together in a band located in Wuk Chuk Hang area. Soon after that, he started teaching drumming in different studios scattered in industrial buildings around Kuntong. Another person I interviewed was Emily Chak from a band called So It Goes and Foster Studio. She was 20 years old back then, now she will be 30. She's the lead singer of these 2 bands and guitarist. She mentions that her band So It Goes used to rehearse in music rooms located in composite buildings of areas of Mong Kok and Yau Ma Tei, where the booking costs range between $8 and $25 per hour for a packed tiny rehearsal space between 90 to 200 square feet with acceptable equipment. These conditions made working on new songs quite challenging. You know, like time is ticking, you have to compose something quick because every hour is like 10, 15, 20 US dollars. She acknowledged, however, the advantages of having their own space now to create music without those time constraints or the need of carrying instruments in a crowded subway during rush hour. And now, the dynamics of her band are mostly based on remote rehearsals. Each member records their parts separately and works on songs from their respective residencies. They practice together in an industrial space owned by a family member of the band, but the long commuting times to the premises together with their demanding job schedules does not allow them for frequent rehearsals. So they start doing it remotely. It's something I've seen more and more in Hong Kong performances. There will be 5 musicians, all of them with their laptops because they've been working on their stuff and they will be performing with the instruments at the laptops. And this is creating a do-it-yourself sound very particular of Hong Kong as well. So yeah, this form of rehearsal is quite common. This is one song by her band, Foster Studio, one of them. all their videos are also do-it-yourself videos, and they're all recorded in Hong Kong, so in a way they also provide their vision of the city and the lyrics as well. It's a message when you watch this video on YouTube. There's some sort of message. This song is called Houston, in reference to like escaping or flying to space, and it's a message from Mission Control Center. Home is beautiful when it's far away. Well, another option for young creative are youth centers such as The Warehouse. The Warehouse is an organization that offers a variety of activities including music, graffiti, art, dance, drama, social activities, adventure-based education, and sports to youngsters between the age of 13 and 25. There are also university music clubs like the one in Hong Kong, University Student Union. However, some of these musicians find these centers quite institutionalized, politicized, or under religious influence, which make industrial or small commercial premises more appealing to them in many cases. Creative tactics in a global post-colony. A rusty, anonymous intercom, partially hidden by some plastic ivies. Past the door, a narrow metallic staircase, source of random encounters, and only access point to a one-off experience. Hundreds of people, local and foreigners, gather in a tiny dark room, a miscellany of sweat, smoke, voices, and distant music. On June 14, 2019, Hong Kong's music scene paid tribute to Sense 99, one of the most unique live music venues in Hong Kong Island, with a farewell party that featured performances by Le Groupe Electrogène Fanfare Club. You will see later some pictures of them. You cannot classify them, but they are a kind of brass ensemble. Some Kid Mansions, funky disco synth pop, and the participation of artists like the lead singer of After Party in some of their songs. She will be playing some music tonight in an event. I will tell you about it later. What had been Sense 99, located on the second and third floors of a colonial era building at 99 Wellington Street, was moving elsewhere in Soho area due to a rental increase. We want fundraise. I don't want to give in to real estate developers. State the owner as a response to initiatives presented by people. Like they wanted to do some crowdfunding to keep the place alive. I talked with him. I don't have the interview published because he was in Cantonese and I need to put some subtitles. But he basically, there was a hair salon in the first floor, and they said like, whatever these guys pay you, I will give you 10K more. You know that. So I mean, they couldn't compete, and they didn't want to compete with them. So these are some images of that night. This is the building. This is the Fanfare Electrogène group. I told you they will play at Clock and Flap as well. So this live venue bar was distributed in 2 floors of no more than 500 square feet each. The first one with a lounge offering alcoholic drinks for a reasonable price, and upright piano, sofas, and a cozy environment. And the second floor was a bit darker with graffiti and bizarre decoration, housed some very worn-out music equipment that many musicians, most of them very talented, especially jazz musicians, also sometimes random drunk people, beginners, would play while blending with a mixed audience. Also, the second floor offered this small terrace where people will go out, smoke, and talk. the constant negotiations over place and its narrative, such as what we see in Sense 99, no? The colonial building turned into an underground music venue with like a really mixed audience, are representative of Hong Kong's particular dilemmas when positioning itself as an Asian worlding city. Caught up in a Gordian knot created by the pressures of mainland China influence on Western democracies, Hong Kong's international position as well as its internal sociopolitical equilibrium are being challenged. Notions of identity in the city underlie confronting ideas and opinions about absence, particularly absence of a historic urban legacy, as well as the increasing presence of an administrative and spatial strategies that follow, in many cases, mainland Chinese models. The sort of catastrophic relationship here particularly is felt particularly among the post-1980s generation. These sentiments have reinforced the Hong Kongese localist movement in recent years. In addition to the lack of spaces to perform or listen to live music in the city, the majority of musicians I interview emphasize the lack of mobility outside Hong Kong due to the geographical isolation determined by like mainland China and the sea, so it's very hard for them to travel around. Interviewees consider China as a hostile or forbidden place in many cases to perform, and many of their lyrics, they said they're subjected to censorship there, and playing there can be also seen negatively by other artists. So there's a lot of emotionally charged political tension. So progressing as a musician within the Cantonese music scene is very difficult, also due to socio-political economic obstacles, and entering the English-speaking market dominated by the Anglo-Saxon world is another challenge, right? Well, many of these bands sing in English as well, but not all of them. And touring outside Hong Kong is a super expensive luxury that underground bands in most cases cannot afford. Where is this a band called Little Airport? There are some very interesting interviews online where they really position themselves as well and provide their context. Okay. I would say like, well, how these places in a way had to, they were not only about music, right? This space also became like a second-hand clothes market. They host exhibition or used to host exhibition in some of them. Like any wall is subjected to expression, like stickers, messages, so it became like a whole movement. If you see the posters, the song, it's a whole thing, and it's a lot of do-it-yourself and collaborations between different people. In a way, like this, I make the reference to this because this in the book Messy Urbanism, edited by Jeffrey Ho, they talk about this kind of equilibrium, right, that you see in the flower market of Mongkok. Actually, I'm staying here these days. In a way, yeah, like people find their way within this jungle. But it's not only like a peaceful equilibrium, right? As we've seen in some concepts of hidden agenda, this town needs, etc. This is the fifth location of hidden agenda under the name of this town needs. This is the floor plan. This is some of the drawing. It's funny that this venue is in this floor. This is the first official venue they had, and here you have this residential complex, like quite fancy. So these two things coexist. So I'm just gonna conclude quickly with a little story, right? The embodiment through sounds and lights. Like Wong Kar-wai's cinematographic style has often been characterized by featuring a predominance of atmosphere and mood over the more narrative aspects of the film, right? The embodiment of Hong Kong through underground music follows a similar pattern. The city countless narratives generating a series of intermingling moods, a mix of discontent and muffled excitement. Like the colors and grays, much like the eclectic exchanges of diverse genre that result from the proximity and imperfect separation between rehearsal rooms in some music studios in the city. The very last case study I will show is Mom Life House. It's located in the lower ground of a shopping center near North Point. This venue is fairly big for Hong Kong standards, but the whole experience to get there is like a ritual, right? To get to Mom Life House. Like before entering Mom, the queue is the origin of casual conversations around an orange metallic cube that turns black, green, or purple in the inside, where the combination of sounds and lights acts as a social condenser via the affective power of music. This is the last image. On the night of October 3rd, 2019, in the middle of a week when the city's protests reached maximum intensity, Kim, the always introverted singer of the band Thought, right now they changed the name, it's called Lucid Express, all dressed in black, read a short text in English at the end of the concert. Standing behind her synths, she asked herself with despair, like, who would have imagined this would happen in Hong Kong, at least so soon, right? And she started crying, and most of the people, we started crying with her. Well, I didn't imagine back then that in October last year I went to New York for a conference, and they were starting their US tour in New York that week, and I managed to see them there. So it really made me feel really good about it. Well, this is all. I finished with a song of these guys. Thank you.